The open meeting law requires that I notify the public that this meeting is being recorded. Therefore, please be aware that an audio and visual recording of this meeting is being made and broadcast by Boston City TV, which is a part of the City of Boston Office of Cable Communications. And the first item is request authorization for the approval of the minutes of September 14, 2017 meeting. Motion's in order?
So, second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 2, request authorization to enter into a lease agreement with Castlebridge LLC for the use of 500 square feet at 12 Channel Street, Suite number 103, within the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park. Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Castlebridge is a maker of custom kitchen cabinetry, and they've been a tenant in 12 Channel Street since 2013. They occupy a very small suite on the first floor of approximately 500 square feet. The suite has its own loading bay, but it's not heated. I mean, it is heated, but it's not air conditioned. We're proposing a 2-year lease at $20 per square foot, which is very competitive given the suite's condition and lack of amenities. That rate will go up by 3% in the second year, and we will net just over $20,000 in the next 2 years.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none. A motion's in order?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Dennis. Item number 3, request authorization to enter into a license agreement with Mass Robotics, Inc. for the use of 2,000 square feet at 12 Channel Street, Suite 202, within the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park. Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mass Robotics has been a tenant at 12 Channel Street since 2016. They operate a shared workspace for robotics startups on the 5th floor. They're now 100% occupied, and they're turning away potential tenants. Under the terms of their lease, they have a right of first offer for a currently vacant 22,000 square foot suite on the 2nd floor. They're currently raising capital to take on the expensive build out of that floor, and the right of first refusal will expire in February of 2018. In the meantime, they have requested to move their machine shop equipment from the 5th floor to a small portion of the 2nd floor to make room for a new tenant on to occupy the 5th floor. We're requesting permission to allow Mass Robotics to move the equipment down to the 2nd floor with no immediate rent increase. However, if they have not exercised their option for the 2nd floor or remove their equipment by the end of February, they would start paying rent for the storage of it.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Any questions from the board? Hearing none. A motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 4, request authorization to enter into a lease agreement with Green Site Ergonomics for the use of 10,000 square feet at 12 Channel Street, Suite 605, within the Raymond L. Flynn Park. Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Green Site Ergonomics uses remote drones to provide what they call a grass analysis platform for land managers, such as golf courses or farms. They're interested in leasing Suite 605 and 12 Channel Street. The suite is approximately 10,000 square feet. It's in very good shape. It's air conditioned, has a nice view of Boston Harbor. They will utilize the suite to build drones and to provide the flight monitoring platforms. Basically what they do is they have clients throughout the country, primarily golf courses right now, where they'll fire up the drones every morning, fly around the golf course and report what they find to the operations crew so they know where to fertilize and water, etc. Other than a routine inspection of the current air conditioning system and 5 months free run on the front end, BPDA is not spending any capital on tenant improvements. We're proposing a 5-year lease. The rent will commence at $28 per square foot plus expenses. So the $28 is pure net to BPDA. That annual rent will increase by $1 per square foot, and we'll receive over $1.4 million during the 5-year lease.
Okay, any questions from the board?
Will they be doing any testing on site?
I don't think so. It's so close to, never say never, but as I understand it, because of its proximity to Logan, you can't just fly drones around South Boston. You have to have a caged-in area or a netted area. That doesn't exist right now, but between these guys and Mass Robotics, they would love it if that existed. We just haven't figured out how to do that yet.
If there's no further questions, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Dennis. Item number 5, request authorization to enter into a license agreement with Boston Print Specialist LLC, doing business as Alpha Graphics Boston, for the use of 969 square feet cage B2 in the basement of 12 Channel Street within the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park. Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In August of 2017, BPDA Board approved a 5-year lease of 7,000 square feet on the 8th floor to Alpha Graphics. They're a marketing, design, and custom print company. As they're currently moving in and setting up, they realized that they could use some additional storage space. We currently have a couple vacancies in our storage cages, and they would like to rent one of the cages from us to be coterminous with their existing lease. The fee for the cage will be about $650 a month, which would result in about $39,000 during the term of the lease.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 6, request authorization to enter into a license agreement with the New Boston Pride Committee, Inc. for the use of 1,315 square feet cage B7 in 12 Channel Street within the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park. Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a very similar situation with Boston Pride. They've been a tenant in the building since 2016. They occupy about 1,500 square feet on the 5th floor. They utilize it for a small office and storage for their activities, and nonprofit educational activities. They also are in need of additional storage space, and we happen to have another cage available, and we'd like to rent that to them for the same rate of $650 per month, which would result coterminous with their lease, which ends in 2021, and we would receive just over $26,000 during the term of the lease.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Any questions on the board? Motion's in order?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 7, request authorization to extend the contract with CoStar Group, Inc. for the real estate marketing and analytics service subscription in an amount not to exceed $37,500. Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. CoStar is a national provider of commercial real estate information, roughly similar to the multiple listing service that most residential real estate brokers would access. This specializes in purely commercial real estate. A fee is required to access property information in CoStar. CoStar subscribers are generally commercial real estate brokers, appraisers, commercial property owners like ourselves, and bankers. Also, we're asking is for permission to re-up our license with CoStar Showcase, which is also under the CoStar umbrella. You have to pay to put information in CoStar, but anyone in the general public can access it for free. So we want to utilize that to market our property as well. We've subscribed to CoStar since 2006, and it's proven to be a very valuable tool for us. I quite frankly couldn't imagine doing business without it. We download analytical reports. It's great for getting current market data. It helps us value our property. It helps us market our property, and it helps us help companies find space throughout the city that's not necessarily ours, but we want to be helpful to any company that wants to move into Boston.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Any questions from the board? Hearing none, motion's in order?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Dennis. Item number
Thank you.
8. Request authorization to enter into a memorandum of agreement with the City of Boston, acting by and through its Property Management Department, authorizing the use of security services at the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park and 43 Hawkins Street. Ed.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Secretary Paul Hemus. This memorandum seeks your authorization for the director to enter into a memorandum of agreement with the City of Boston for security services at the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park and at 43 Hawkins Street. Raymond L. Flynn Park in South Boston was initially acquired by EDIC in 1977. Today, it has an estimated workforce of approximately 5,000 people. In addition, EDIC staff occupy space at 43 Hawkins Street, including administration and finance, budget, human resources, Reed Boston, and the Office of Workforce and Policy Development. The City of Boston's Municipal Protective Services Program has provided security services at both of these locations for many years. These uniformed officers have the power to make arrests, to preserve order, and enforce the laws of the Commonwealth and the ordinances of the City of Boston. The proposed MOA for EDIC will cover the remainder of fiscal year 2017, beginning on February 1st, 2017, and ending on June 30th, 2017, as well as the balance of the entirety of fiscal year 2018. The combined total cost to the EDIC for MPS security services at the park and at 43 Hawkins Street authorized under this MOA shall not exceed $1,009,452.87. I'd like to note that we have recently adjusted the hours of the coverage at the Raymond L. Flynn Park for a savings of approximately $100,000. So the MPS services at the park will not exceed $890,062.19. Total cost for 43 Hawkins Street will not exceed $119,390.68. It's expected that the funding for both of these will come from the EDIC operating budget, and it is therefore the staff's recommendation that the director be authorized to execute and to deliver a memorandum of agreement with the City of Boston for security services at the Raymond L. Flynn Marine Park and 43 Hawkins Street. I should also note that the board will see a proposed similar action as BRA agenda item number 30 as it pertains to services at the China Trade Building on Boylston Street. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the board might have.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you. Item number 9, personnel. Jeanette.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Madam Secretary. Jeanette Carlovell for the BPDA. We have a few items for your consideration on the EDIC agenda. We have 3 appointments for your consideration. Lynn Sanders, Senior Research Analyst, and Sean Temus, Program Manager for Early Literacy, Reed Boston, both in the OWD Division, and Jared Staley, Planner 1 in the Planning Division. For your consideration, we have 3 employment service contractors with details listed in the board memos. Manuel Escovel Echeverria, Senior Infrastructure and Energy Planning Fellow in the Planning Division. In the OWD Division, we have Ran Chokmachi and Joaquin Texiera. We have 2 departures, and they are Kevin Wandry from the Research Division and Anne-Marie Isaacson from the ANF Division. For your consideration, we have 1 administrative item for Eileen Brophy to delegate signatory power and acting general counsel, sign off by the general counsel with details listed in the board memo. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jeanette. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much. We need a motion to adjourn the EDIC meeting.
I move that we adjourn the EDIC meeting.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned. The open meeting law requires that I notify the public that this meeting is being recorded. Therefore, please be aware that an audio and visual recording of this meeting is being made and broadcast by Boston City TV, which is a part of the City of Boston Office of Cable Communications. The first item is request for authorization for the approval of the minutes of September 14th, 2017 meeting. Motion's in order.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. I'm going to read all of these, and we'll do one vote at the end for the next item for all these requests for authorization for public hearings. Item number 2, request authorization to advertise a public hearing on November 16th, 2017 at 5:30 p.m. or at a date and time to be determined by the director to consider the Harvard University Institutional Master Plan notification form for an amended and notice of project change for the Science and Engineering Complex to modify the gross floor area calculations. Item number 3, request authorization to advertise a public hearing on November 16th, 2017 at 5:40 p.m. or at a date and time to be determined by the director to consider the second amended and restated development plan for Plan Development Area Number 69, South Boston, the 100 acres, 49, 51, and 63 Melcher Street at Fort Point Channel District of South Boston. Item number 4, request authorization to advertise a public hearing on November 16th, 2017 at 5:50 p.m. or at a date and time to be determined by the director regarding the Landmark Center project located in the Fenway as a development impact project. Item number 5, request authorization to advertise a public hearing on November 16, 2017 at 6 p.m. or at a date and time to be determined by the director to consider the application of QMC Huntington LLC and Huntington Theater Company for the 252 through 258 Huntington Avenue Chapter 121A project. Item number 6, request authorization to advertise a public hearing on November 16, 2017 at 6:10 p.m. or at a date and time to be determined by the director regarding the amended and restated development plan for Plan Development Area Number 78, Seaport Square, and to consider the notice of project change as a development impact project. Item number 7, request authorization to advertise a public hearing on November 16, 2017 at 6:20 p.m. or at a date and time to be determined by the director to consider the amended and restated development plan for Plan Development Area Number 2, the Back Bay South End Gateway Project, and 200 Clarendon Street, and to consider the project as a development impact project. Item number 8, request authorization to advertise a public hearing on November 16, 2017 at 6:30 p.m. or at a date and time to be determined by the director to consider the development plan for Plan Development Area Number 113, 159, 201 Washington Street in Brighton. A motion is in order to post all those public hearings.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Should I drink water?
I know, yeah, I know. Item number 9, Board of Appeal. Jeff, are there any changes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. No changes. 38 petitions have been prepared for transmittal to the Board of Appeal.
Okay, are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Jeff. Item number 10. Request authorization to petition the Zoning Commission to adopt a text amended to Article 53 East Boston Neighborhood District, 55 Jamaica Plain Neighborhood District, and 60 Greater Mattapan Neighborhood District of the Boston Zoning Code with respect to additional dwelling units. Lara, sorry.
It's okay, I have a friend named Mara.
Sorry.
Thank you, Chairman Burke, members of the board, Director Golden, Secretary Paulimas. I'm excited to present to you tonight a pilot program that we've been working with our partners from the city and with the Mayor's Housing Innovation Lab, as well with Inspectional Services. We've, for the last 2 years, been working on this 18-month pilot that is looking at, well, I would say that has been authorized through the Housing 2030 plan, as well as the Imagine Boston 2030 plan, to really think creatively of how we can increase housing opportunities in our city, but in different formats. So you've seen the density bonus that we've done in our strategic planning areas. This is looking at maybe the existing context of neighborhoods and thinking through how we can add additional units within an existing envelope and trying to see if that is a way that we can add units to a neighborhood without changing the character of the neighborhood. I'm going to turn it over to Marcy, who will give you a presentation that we've been giving over the last 2 years in the public within each of these neighborhoods of Jamaica Plain, Mattapan, and East Boston. We've received overwhelming support within the community. There are still quite a bit of questions on the feasibility of this and what are some things that we need to think about, not only within our zoning code, but within our building code. So as I said, this will be an 18-month pilot. We hope that with that, we'll be able to learn how we might be able to surgically tweak the zoning, and then think about this as a citywide policy. So I'll turn it over to Marcy now to give the PowerPoint.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Wonderful. So my name is Marcy Osberg. I'm the director of the Housing Innovation Lab, and it's been a wonderful honor to work with BPDA and ISD on this project. We're very excited to have it to this point. So I'm going to give you an overview and then hand it over back to the BPDA to talk about the zoning. So what is an additional dwelling unit? In other parts of the country, they are often called accessory dwelling units. We're using the term additional. And we're having this term be about carving out a new rental within the envelope of the home. Not detached or attached units, but within the envelope. There's 5 reasons we're excited about this, 5 goals. One, we believe that it can help increase affordable housing options. We also believe that it's an option for multi-generational family arrangements. Your old aging parent or students coming back home to their families. There's different family arrangements that this can support. It's also a safer living arrangement, so we can bring illegal units online through this program, maybe illegal basement units and such. It's also can support homeowners to remain in their homes by getting a little extra rental income coming in. And then finally, we believe that it's one more solution to help with the city's housing crisis and help support our housing goals. So how are we proposing to do this? The pilot, we're looking at 3 different neighborhoods, East Boston, Jamaica Plain, and Mattapan. And as Laura said, it would be an 18-month pilot that would allow these to be zoned in those neighborhoods during that duration. We chose those neighborhoods because they are so distinct, and as a pilot, we want to learn as much as we can from these different neighborhoods, thinking about going to the citywide scale. Qualifications, so if to be qualified to get an additional dwelling unit in your home, you need to be an owner-occupant in one of those pilot neighborhoods, and it needs to be 3 units or less, so it cannot be a 4-unit building, 3 units or less. Other components, it will need to adhere to full building code and safety code, and it'll be improved by Inspectional Services Department, and as we've mentioned, they've been a key partner in developing this plan. Just some images to highlight what this means. So bump outs, detached units, and attached units are not allowed. Carve out within the envelope and basement and attic apartments would be allowed. To give you a sense of what we've done over the last 2 years that we've been working on this, we began in the fall 2 years ago through a partnership with the Northeastern University architecture class, and they did some analysis of the existing zoning and what might be allowed. From there, we started having community meetings in different neighborhoods to understand what this might look like in those 3 neighborhoods. In the spring, then we talked about the mechanics of the zoning and what the language might need to be. This past summer, we did more public engagements, this time at an individual level. So we went into homeowners' homes that were interested in this program. We said, would this work for you? How would this help you? Why or why not? That then informed our zoning again, and now we are here seeking approval. So just to give you a sense of some of the kind of homes that this could help and homeowners this could help, all the way on the left there, it could be that a home has existing extra unit because it was an old servant's quarters. These are all based on the conversations we had with homeowners going into their homes. We saw a unit like this. And so they could use this as an illegal rental right now, and maybe they are. And so this program would help bring that unit online, get it on the rental registry, make it much safer. If there's ever fire, we know what's going on. So that's one. Another might be carving out 2 units in the first floor of a 1 or of a 2 or 3 family. So that's another example. We talked to one gentleman who was interested in doing this. He wants to have his parents move in. He just had a child, have them move into 1 unit and still use the other as a rental. Another example might be a basement conversion, and then a 4th example would be an attic conversion. Some other supports we're planning to put with this zoning to help homeowners use this, because it's one thing to make it allowed, but it's a whole other thing to help them go through the process. So we're going to have a toolkit that helps homeowners know how do they go through the permitting process, what the financing structures might be, and that sort of thing. We also are working with the Boston Home Center to have a loan program that would tie, if they use that loan program, then the unit would be affordable. And then finally, we're planning to walk some homeowners through the process and give more extensive technical assistance so we can learn with them. So that's the overview, and now I'm going to turn it over back to the BPDA to talk about the specific language of the zoning we've put together.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm Brian Glasscock. I'm Deputy Director for Planning and Regulatory Zoning. There's a sort of a 2-step process. Excuse me. There's sort of a 2-step process here. First, actually creating within the definitions, definition of an additional dwelling unit, and then secondarily allowing that as a use within the pilot neighborhoods. In some communities that we looked at that have added this sort of a use, they have called it accessory dwelling units or granny flats and so on. Thought the term accessory really confuses the issue because the underlying use is still residential, so it's not truly accessory to that use. And as you can see from the language, we've tried to keep it fairly tight. The main thing, and as you saw from the illustrations, the footprint of the underlying structure remains the same. So you're not adding on to the building. It's utilizing space within the building that otherwise would be lost. And this also opens up the opportunity to capture some of those pre-existing non-permitted illegal units that we know are out there and attract them in to be brought up to both building and fire code issues as well as sanitary code standards.
That conclude the presentation? Okay, thank you.
I do also want to say Commissioner Christopher had hoped to be here this afternoon, I guess it's still, but he wanted to be able to show his support, and that ISD has been a key partner in thinking through how we can think through this through our zoning code and our building code.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the board?
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, just at the right time.
We just finished the presentation.
We know what you're going to say.
Good afternoon. Perfect timing. I don't want to take much of your time up, but I do want to talk about the ADU and what it means to our communities. This is an opportunity for us to get some housing stock that is compatible with our neighbors. It's consistent with the fabric and the construction, so it doesn't infringe upon the growth of our neighborhoods, but it does allow housing for people from neighborhoods. The hope of this is a way to allow more housing that does not impact the community. We are very much in favor. I've worked with the team now for about 2 years. We've been out to all of the communities. It's been overwhelming support to go forward with it. So I would really request that you support this zoning change so that we can move forward with it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for coming. All right, are there any questions from the board? We have some questions. Go ahead, Mike.
And either Billy or anyone, I think it's an excellent idea. A couple questions. I know it has to be owner-occupied. Does it have to be owner-occupied forever? So it's owner-occupied, the additional unit is added, building code is adhered to, zoning obviously would have to be adhered to.
Yes, the plan for it is that we're going to be using the rental registry program as the barometer by which we're going to keep track of this. To apply, it has to be owner-occupied, and the extension of the occupant load will only be extended to someone who is an owner-occupant. In the event it's sold to a non-owner occupant, they will lose that additional unit as we go forward. And again, it'll be, the rental registry is required to be registered every year, so that'll be the way by which we monitor this.
And one further question, is it able to bypass the ZBA?
Well, we've rewritten the ZBA so that we can deal with the issues without that. So it would be an allowed use in those limited areas for this pilot program initially. If we find after the 18-month period that we're planning to put it into place that it's successful, and by that I mean that there's no negative impact on the community, then we will come back to the board so that we can do a permanent zoning change.
So if it triggered FAR, Billy, let's say, it's not, you won't have to go get approval from the ZBA at
Right.
first?
It's
You would, Jeff? No, Jeff? Okay, great.
And,
Excellent.
and what it is, Mr. Mahoney, is that we're looking at livable space that are in houses currently. It's also, we'll have the byproduct of we're hoping to be inclusionary in a lot of the illegal apartments that exist today. We will not compromise life safety issues in
I
any way,
understand
shape,
that,
or
yeah.
form.
Yeah, all building, all that has to be adhered to, of course.
Yes.
The second means egress, all of that, but.
And we're
it
working-
Triggered, it would trigger, the only thing we'd do in an existing house, I guess, would be FAR, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And we're not allowing any expansion outside of the building so that there'll not be any design issues that come into play.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Who would provide the design support work for a homeowner who wants to take advantage of this?
It'll be a three-pronged approach. ISD will be the place you originally start your permitting process. BPDA will be part of the design review process, and then D&D is promoting a program by which we'll be able to offer some financial assistance to those people that are eligible, so that between all three of us, the caveat is that it's got to be a real apartment. It can't be a basement that has rooms that are extraneous with corridors and all of that. It's got to be a livable apartment. The one area that we're really looking at is the minimal square footage. We know that we do have units throughout our city that are 400 square feet. We're not promoting that, but we see this as a way for older residents that are on fixed incomes to bring in some income to them to go forward. It's a way for us to provide housing for children or people returning from colleges. And again, it's a way to increase our housing stock at a very slow pace under a very controlled condition.
A couple questions. So, have any other cities or
The Marcy
done
question.
something similar, and what was their outcome?
There are lots of cities around the country that are doing similar work, a lot on the West Coast. And most of the time, it's not just restricted to the within the envelope. They're not finding that there's a lot of units created from this. I'm trying to remember the exact numbers, but I don't think I can get you exact numbers. But it was very minimal number of units created in San Francisco from this program. And actually, a lot of the cities are revamping their programs to remove restrictions to help more homeowners be able to take advantage of this, because most of the time it's too restrictive.
And so, what do we think is going to be the like the uptake on this? Do we already have like people lined up? What's our promotion process? Like, how are we going to, fill up this pilot? And is there a cap to it, or
We don't have a cap, and that's mostly because we're thinking that we're going to have the opposite problem, where there's not enough people who are taking it on, because it is reliant on the homeowner to usually to finance it themselves and to want to put in the effort to build the unit, and that takes a lot. So we're concerned about there not being enough, and that's why we were putting in place the toolkit. We're going to walk some of the early adopters through the process with them, and we're hoping to get some of the financing through the Boston Home Center. So we have a list of interested parties that we're already excited to share when this is live and to work through, and right now that is about 20 homeowners. I don't think all of them will be able to do it, because they'll need to have enough light, 2 egresses, other things that are already existing in the building itself, since we're not allowing any exterior changes.
And as far as from a promotional perspective, like, how are we going to get the word out there of like, this is something new? And
Yep, so we'll work with the press team and the communications teams here. We already have a website through the Housing Innovation Lab, and we'll just do as much promoting as we can. I think we'll probably also try to have a few events in the neighborhoods where this is happening.
Exciting, great.
It'll get around.
Okay, if there's no further questions, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much. Good luck with the program. Item number 11, request authorization to petition the Zoning Commission to adopt a text and map amendment to Article 41 and Zoning Map 1D, Huntington Ave Prudential Center District, of the zoning code with respect to areas where planned development areas are allowed. Jeff.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Secretary Paul Hamus. The proposed text and map amendments before you tonight affect a specific zoning district. Article 41 in Map 1D of the Boston Zoning Code that deal with the Huntington Avenue Prudential Center District. Right now, there's been a lot of discussion and interest about a proposed development along Boylston Street, specifically 1000 Boylston, and some of the air rights. Right now, that area is bisected by two separate zoning districts and are on two separate zoning maps. And right now, what we are proposing is that we move the northernmost line of the Huntington Avenue district to the middle line of Boylston Street to encompass this proposed development site. It would also allow the area that is governed by Boylston, St. Cecilia Street, Scotia Street, and Dalton Street to be PDA eligible, and that would be noted on the map as PDA eligible. This amendment does not approve any development plan. Any sort of development plan that may be proposed would have to come before the board for your approval and also for the Zoning Commission. Similar amendments were done in 2011 to this district in particular, most notably the Christian Science Campus in the Copley Tower. Both of those were done in August of 2011, and the development plans for those projects were approved in late 2011, so this is not precedent setting. This is something that we've done specifically for large-scale projects within this district.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Are there any questions from the board?
Jeff, I just asked a question. Does this help build more, or is this cut?
It offers another zoning tool. There's always that Board of Appeal, but it gets real murky when you have a district line where you now have two sets of zoning regulations applying to one development site. So what we're trying to do is clean it up, and when you make something PDA eligible, it allows a tool for a large-scale development that right now isn't afforded to that site.
I like it.
Okay. If there's no further questions, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Item number 12, request authorization to replace the climate change preparedness and resiliency guidelines and checklists through the adoption of the updated climate change policy 2017 and to incorporate said policy into the BPDA Article 80 Development Review Guidelines. John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Secretary Pohemus. I have the privilege of introducing this update with you. I wanted to start with a little background. In 2013, with the board approval of the Climate Change Preparedness and Resiliency Guidelines and the related checklist, Boston stepped into the forefront of climate change adaptation. Since implementation in 2013, over 270 projects have considered future climate conditions in project impact assessment and mitigation and included adaptation strategies in their projects. In 2017 and 2013, the City of Boston completed the Imagine Boston 2030 master plan, as well as the Climate Ready Boston plan, which is our latest climate action plan. And then most importantly, a body of work referred to as the Boston Research Advisory Report, which was a scientific assessment of climate change conditions. Those pieces of work the scientific research, the recommendations have informed this proposed update to our climate change checklist. The focus of the update is on greenhouse gas emission mitigation, and this is in line with the mayor's commitment for Boston to be carbon-free by 2050, and in consideration of climate change impacts. So we know we are expecting more heat, more extreme precipitation, and rising sea levels. Critical, though, is addressing the cause of this, and that is the greenhouse gas emissions. And so, again, supporting the mayor's carbon-free Boston 2050 goals. The research has given us information on what the future could look like in 2070 with increased days over 90, days in 100-degree weather. So we're planning for higher average temperatures and more and longer extreme heat events. We're also anticipating not an overall change in the amount of precipitation, but an increase in the intensity of precipitation events. So these would be storm events that are more likely to cause localized flooding, that will have impacts on our stormwater infrastructure system. It's subtle, but the anticipation is we will move from a 5.25-inch design storm to a 6-inch design storm. It's not a lot, but it is the kind of thing you see in Houston and elsewhere where we're starting to see infrastructure significantly overburdened by weather events. And then lastly, and probably most significantly for the downtown, is work that came out of the research advisory group that included a dynamic flood model for Boston under future greenhouse emission scenarios. And the anticipation is somewhere around 2070 to 2100, Boston could experience over 40 inches of sea level rise. What was done with that was it was used to model coastal storm conditions and the resulting flooding. And what you can see here is that we will experience flooding over a greater extent of area, and in current areas susceptible to flooding, it'll be to higher levels of sea conditions. This is not very different from the approach we take with FEMA, where we anticipate a 100-year flood condition or 100-year storm with the resulting flood conditions, and identify a likely sea level rise, top of water condition. And with FEMA, we plan our buildings accordingly. We set first floor heights above those levels, and we plan sites for these kinds of conditions and access to sites for these kinds of conditions. This extends that area, and as you can see, it goes much further inland. And I should say, this illustration anticipates no intervention on our part. We're out there doing a lot of planning in areas like East Boston, Charlestown, and soon in the Seaport District that we hope will address many of these floodways at the coastal edge. But best practice focuses on multiple solutions, if you will, a belt and suspenders kind of an approach. While we work at the harbor's edge, we want to make sure inland properties are less vulnerable to the potential flooding. These conditions are being employed in the update as a practice target. So projects will be asked to identify how close they can get to that performance level, and if it's not achievable today, what future adaptations they can undertake to achieve that. The update really has built upon the scientific research and the city recommendations of those reports, industry best practice, and I think you're all familiar with the GE proposal along the 4-point channel. So raising sites, raising ground floor conditions, moving mechanical and critical electrical systems and the like out of harm's way have actually become industry practices today. And in many cases, we're finding some of these are no-cost practices, that we're simply changing the way we do things, and if we think about it beforehand, we can do these things without additional project costs. Carbon-free Boston also sets a pretty high bar, and it's a new practice space for the city and for the country, but we're fortunate because we've already been building net zero energy buildings and energy positive buildings. Most importantly, again, in the checklist, we're introducing these specific performance targets, and we're improving our interaction with the development community just to better support them in investigating solutions and better capture their practice information. We've had the good fortune of being able to work with the Green Ribbon Commission on considering these updates. They've provided a great deal of commentary and feedback. And we've had the good fortune of working with NIOP, and Tamara Small deserves a little shout out because she's pulled together real estate developers as a stakeholder group, kind of a development roundtable that could really provide information and feedback from the people who will be undertaking the checklist update requirements. And we've held public meetings and conducted public comment periods. The checklist really follows the focus. The sea level rise conditions are really determined as of necessary. If an area is not susceptible to flooding now or in the future, they don't even have to deal with those aspects of the checklist. And then most importantly, I think the checklist process and the corresponding review goes along with the Article 80 review process. The intent is to engage projects very early when they make an initial filing, to review those filings, respond with comments, and then prior to design approval, we seek an update on the response strategies, and then at conclusion of construction, a further update. Anticipating some things will change. That's the normal course of business. This is concurrent also with the urban design review. We have a commitment to review these submissions in about 3 weeks, and generally are pretty good with that. And that's pretty much it. I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board? Comments?
Go ahead, go first.
We generally look at projects on a case-by-case basis, but it's also clear that in order to address the issues that you're raising here, there's some larger issues involving landscape, for example, and larger scale planning questions. And I'm curious as to how the update addresses both those larger scale planning issues and who's responsible for coordinating all of that activity. And also in a more specific way, you're focusing along the traditionally defined waterfront, Seaport and East Boston and what have you. But what we're finding in a number of the crisis circumstances that we've looked at recently is that other waterways can be as severely impacted, the Neponset or the Fort Point Channel or the Charles River, for example. And so I'm curious as to how this update addresses those kinds of issues, that is to say the things that are a little bit less obvious about water management and resilience and sustainability, but would still have significant impacts on the neighborhoods that are not necessarily along the traditionally defined boundaries along the harbor.
Sure.
Sure. I'm Rich McGinnis, Deputy Director for Climate Change and Environmental Planning. A couple of kind of district-wide things that are underway you should be aware of is one is under management of UMass Boston through the funds from the federal government to look at an outer harbor barrier to protect the city from flooding, and that is looking at connecting the outer harbor islands to create a barrier. So they're looking at a cost-benefit analysis. What are the implications, navigation, habitat? But we're also looking with the Environment Department at East Boston at district-scale solutions. One of the things that we're required to do under Climate Ready Boston is look at flood defense mechanisms and how those are integrated at a neighborhood level. So we looked at East Boston and Charlestown first because they seem a little bit more simpler than South Boston, where the water is coming from everywhere. There's just, small sections of shoreline in East Boston that if you retrofit, you're going to protect hundreds of acres of inland property. So what type of defense mechanisms? They could be a wall, open space, living shoreline. So we're coming up with the engineering solutions first, and then determining how to integrate that through funding, leveraging permitting, and other things. We kicked off last week South Boston Climate Ready Boston, where we're looking at the South Boston waterfront and the 4-Point Channel. Like you said, the 4-Point Channel is a flood path to South Bay, Dorchester, South Boston, Chinatown. It has initial spillover risks right now to South Boston and Fort Point, but in the future, that water is going to push further upstream. So we've got a great consulting team on board where we're going to look at the flood paths and the spillover and what type of physical changes could be made along South Boston's waterfront. Do we learn to live with water, or do we start putting up barriers? There was a recent announcement of working with the trustees for reservation. They're actually very good at managing and implementing complex open space systems. In East Boston, there'll be a plan announced at the end of this month with a series of open space networks that could protect the neighborhood from flooding. So not only are we providing the defense mechanisms, but also open space opportunities. The Parks Department is doing a design for Moakley Park to retrofit Moakley Park, elevate it, which is a direct flood path into South Boston, actually all the way through South Boston to the South Bay. So what we're doing is kind of creating the toolbox of examples to implement these recommendations. The climate change checklist has come up with really good examples of how development can responsibly adapt to current risks, but also future risks. And eventually we're going to start recognizing those examples and building our own kind of building code and zoning for future floodplains. So all these things are underway, and I'd say within the next year, we'll have a really good toolbox to come back and probably recommend a new layer of zoning for future floodplains and other ways to protect the city from these risks.
Yeah, along those lines, knowing that it's going to take some time to kind of build up that toolbox, how are we going to leverage this, checklist within our existing process to kind of foresee what we kind of think it will be, or before it is a required zoning regulation, and how do we incorporate that in our decision making and make that information available?
I think what's great about Climate Ready Boston is we've got the consensus of the risks of what to prepare for, what to plan for, and that's 40 inches of sea level rise, the heat island effect, extreme precipitation, and those will be built into our planning. So from this point forward, when we're doing master planning, we're going to have these things under consideration. The checklist still at this point is encouraging, kind of flagging this risk for the private sector and developments, and encouraging the private sector to think on their own with their architects and engineers to come up with really good solutions that will recognize and slowly integrate into our own building codes. So we're still in that discovery phase. We don't want to overregulate at the moment because we're not sure what works, but we're really leading by example with really good developments like GE, Clippership Wharf in East Boston, Spalding Rehab in Charlestown.
Yeah, I think since it's just such a big concern and problem that's going to be here, if there's a way that we can kind of incorporate that in how we present future projects, or when we're going to those meetings, and just really incorporate this like in the process, it's we'll all be impacted, and just be really like
the maps are overwhelming. Yeah. They're apocalyptic.
I know.
And what we're trying to do is explain that this may be just in inches, maybe it's in feet, but it's not. It's something that can be fixed, can be solved, and we've had really good experiences with the community in explaining that it's not all lost, that there are really good things that we can do to protect neighborhoods now and into the future.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Moynihan had a question?
Rich, I know you're dealing with, obviously, the city of Boston and this issue. Are you involved, or is the state looking at anything? We're fortunate in Boston to have the harbor islands.
Right.
Kind of string around us in a sense, or a gate system could be put up from island to island to protect us hurricane-wise, but also in this scenario. Is there anybody looking at that?
So yes, UMass is doing a study to look at the outer harbor islands to connect them to protect the city from storm surge. It's not going to affect tidal fluctuations, but storm surge, almost like New Bedford and Providence has hurricane barriers. So that study is underway. We sit on the advisory committee, and they're looking at the cost-benefit analysis. How much would it cost to build it, and what are the implications to navigation and other things? But we can't just rely on something like that happening.
No.
We don't know when, but all these things are happening at the same time. But we want to protect our individual neighborhoods as well. But the state is involved in that effort.
There's an opportunity for that, but also to use it tidal power. And people are
Yes,
starting to look
yeah.
at generating electricity from that tide in between those islands. If you have a fixed object, obviously it'll turn the turbine.
The flow will be significant through whatever those openings will be, yes.
Okay, if there's any further questions?
Just one more. Much of what we're looking at here involves physical infrastructure, landscape, that sort of work. But what we're also seeing is that some of the larger impacts are social in nature, both in terms of people being able to remove themselves from the crisis, but more importantly to deal with the resilience that is needed afterwards. I know that the city has a resilience officer and a planning process, and I'm wondering how this work interfaces with the work that she and that office have been doing to engage communities in thinking about how they build their own resilience when the inevitable physical factors hit the city.
We've been working with the Neighborhood Affordable Housing in East Boston on exactly this issue. They're doing their own kind of climate adaptation planning, and I think they appreciate the attention of the East Boston plan, where we're looking at the water's edge and that inland flooding. Important things that we're flagging is evacuation routes, not just roadways, but also through transit, to make sure transit and roadways are available for evacuations. Most of our coastal storms are a little bit more predictable than hurricanes are, so the city would be fortunate enough to be able to kind of plan ahead. But these things are being built into our outreach to the community. There's a workshop next week in Dudley Square where we're engaging the community to come up with guidance in the RFPs for the dispositions in the neighborhood. So we're asking the neighborhood what they'd like to see. In that area, it's more of heat island effect, extreme precipitation. So there is this good engagement with the neighborhood on explaining the risks, but also getting feedback and guidance from them on how to inform the city and how the city grows.
Okay, if there's no further questions, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you very much, John. Item number 13. Request authorization to execute change order number 1 to the Fleming Brothers, Inc. for the existing repair and maintenance services contract for additional services in time in an amount not to exceed $37,500, and to take all related actions, and to advertise and issue an invitation for bids for a repair and maintenance services contract for BRA-owned citywide properties for a 1-year period with a 2-year options. Richard.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Secretary Paul Hemis, Director Golden. We're looking for some additional funding for a general construction contract for this year. We burnt through quite a bit of money this year dealing with Sail Boston, so we had a lot of repairs on the waterfront that could not be deferred, all public safety issues, and we've had a couple of incidents of sinkholes along the waterfront, which have to be addressed immediately. So unfortunately, we went through a lot more than we had anticipated in our budget for this particular year, and I'd also like to request that we increase the amount to $200,000 per year for the new contract going forward.
Okay, any questions from the board?
Just what sinkholes? Can you just,
Sinkholes, yeah.
like,
Mr.
explain what
Monahan
that
talked
were?
about the power of the tide.
Yeah.
It's beating up a lot of our waterfront property, particularly over in the Navy Yard and down in Long Wharf. We have some failing seawalls, and a lot of the, the property's attacked twice a day when the tide goes in and out. So we have a lot of the fines that have breached through some of the seawalls over in the Navy Yard. And so when that comes in, the tide comes in, when it washes out a lot of the soil with it. So we have a lot of terra firma, these sheet piles. So when we go into repair them, in the Navy Yard, we had one adjacent to Flagship Wharf about 18 feet by 18 feet by 12 feet deep. And
Wow.
I don't realize that until a brick is missing.
Right.
So when a brick is missing, and I go to put it back and it drops down into a hole, I don't have the scientific ability to determine that stuff like we can determine the weather 20 years from now. But it's something that, we certainly have to deal with on a regular basis. And I just think it's something that, I'd feel much more confident if we had those money in reserve so we can do this stuff immediately. It's something that's a public safety hazard, but it's something that it's becoming a big problem. A lot of these properties are 30, 40 years old. We've acquired them from the Navy. Down in Long Wharf, it's something that we're about to do an engineering study on all our waterfront properties to take a look at this stuff because, basically we're putting Band-Aids on issues that are going to be capital construction projects.
Yeah,
very
so
shortly.
that engineering study would do some kind of assessment to see if this is a really
It's-
pervasive or isolated.
Yes,
to different- okay.
it's overdue, it's necessary, it's something that we really need because like I said, the Band-Aids keep getting bigger and bigger that we're putting on these problems. But, anything that you're dealing with on the waterfront, any waterfront infrastructure is going to be very expensive. So, frankly, I wish I had the budget that they had on the Greenway for all the properties that we deal with, but what we have is pretty much, we make do with what we have. And frankly, I wish it was more, but it's always give and take with our finance department. So I think going forward, particularly with the winter season coming up, our general contractor is always a backup to our snow removal contractor. So it's something that, we really want to get in place right away.
Go ahead, Mr.
Rich, are you pumping grout, or are you doing flowable concrete to fill them? Or?
Well, for the one over in the Navy Yard, we put down big gravel, small gravel, then cement, a cement pad, and then we put the bricks right over it again. A lot of stuff down in the Long Wharf Plaza, it's all waterproof grout that we put in. It's a lot of repointing of the cobblestones down there. This is something that we would have deferred maybe until we had put out an RFP for the project. But with Sail Boston coming up in the time frame, we had to go forward with all this stuff. So those are things that, really normally we would be budgeted for the full year. But with the Sail Boston as a special event and with the sinkhole, it's just something that we've increasingly noticed that it's become an issue, and we'd have a lot more confidence if we could deal with these things with the money in place right away to have a general contractor go right out and do it.
Okay, if there's no further questions, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you,
Thank you,
Richard.
Jim.
Item number 14, request authorization to execute a change order number 5 to the existing general construction contract with Enterprise Equipment, Inc. for the mechanical system improvements at the China Trade Building located at 2 Boylston Street in an amount not to exceed $21,879. Paul.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Secretary Polimis, and Director Golding. Enterprise Equipment is providing mechanical system improvements to the China Trade Center. It's quite an extensive project, and we're at the point now, we're almost at the end of the project where we are substantially complete, and in November we'll be final complete. The work was significant. The existing infrastructure of the HVAC equipment was beyond its normal lifespan. I've been quite pleased with Enterprise as a contractor. It's been very nice to work with, and I'd be pleased to work with them again. The original contract amount was $1.7 million for the work, which for what we had to do, believe it or not, it was a very good price for what we actually received for the equipment, and especially important knowing that we have a lot of new tenants coming into the building. It was crucial to make sure that we had a good system up and running by the time they hit the ground running for day one of their lease. This is a small amount, all in comparison, $21,879. That was basically repairing leaks and flushing out some of the existing systems that had not been flushed out prior to that. We had some reinforcing masonry walls and chimneys that we needed to reinforce in order to put the new flues down to the new equipment. And we had to add that's called condenser water isolation valves. That's basically shut-off valves for each floor, so that when you want to work on the system, you could shut it down, and you didn't have to shut down the whole system. You could just do it isolated. And it saves a lot of time and money. So we are on schedule, and the amount is $21,879.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board? Motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Item number 15, request authorization to advertise and issue an invitation for bids for construction services for the fifth-floor office renovations project at the China Trade Building located at 2 Boylston Street. Paul.
Again, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, the leasing department's been very successful getting that floor designated. On September 14, 2017, the board authorized the director to execute all necessary documents to a lease with Massachusetts Department of Children and Families for the fifth-floor space located at China Trade Center Building. The BPDA Capital Construction Department was assigned to do the architectural design and construction management of the office improvement project. The fifth floor is approximately 14,000 square feet that they will be located in. So basically, my department has been working with them and the leasing department to secure all the necessary contract documents, specifications, and we are ready to go out to bid. That particular bid will go out under Chapter 149 bid laws. We will also solicit MBE WB as part of the solicitation. And then once we get a contractor that's been the lowest qualified eligible bidder, we'll be back in December requesting permission to award that contract.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 16, request authorization to advertise and issue an invitation for bids for the construction of stairway improvements at the China Trade Building located at 2 Boylston Street. Paul.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, a project is necessary to repair structural issues and comply with state building code requirements for 2 egress stairways. Those stairways were constructed in 1887, so we have our work cut out for us in order to comply with the new state building code. The scope includes structural bracing and reinforcement to the landings, adding handrails, guardrails, replacing stair treads due to the age of the existing stairways. Plans and specifications have been prepared through my department and the consultant BHNA, so currently we're ready to advertise. The contract will be bid in accordance with Chapter 149 for the lowest eligible and responsible bidder. And again, once the contractor is selected, we'll be back again requesting the board for approval of that particular project.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you very much.
Item number 17, request authorization to extend the tentative designation of East Boston Community Development Corporation as redeveloper of 148 through 172 Condor Street. Dennis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In October of 2016, the board awarded tentative designation status to the East Boston Community Development Corporation for the development of the 7-acre parcel at 146 Condor Street in East Boston. East Boston CDC's intent is to develop a maritime industrial center consistent with the goals of the RFP, port regulations, and City of Boston zoning. The tentative designation was extended in April and July of 2017. During the extensions, East Boston CDC has continued to meet with prospective maritime dependent tenants. They finalized the site plan concept for BPDA review. They received final report on the condition of the seawall, which is failing, as my colleagues were pointing out earlier. They're soliciting price quotes to rebuild the seawall, and they've finalized their geotechnical report. We're requesting an additional 90-day extension of the tentative designation to allow the East Boston CDC to continue their pre-development due diligence and to finalize total development costs. Would also allow BPDA to order a market rate appraisal of the property. Once all those economics are better understood, we can have a more educated conversation to begin negotiation of a long-term ground lease.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Item number 18, request authorization to extend the final designation of Molina Partners LLC as redeveloper of parcel 9 in the Southwest Corridor Development Plan. Dana.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Director Golden, and Secretary Paul Hemus. With this board action, we are pleased to advise that this will be the final request for a designation extension for this development team. The team has been working extremely hard with inspectional services, obviously with BPDA, on elements of its designation. Most notably, this past week, the team received final approval for their final working drawings and specifications from Inspectional Services Department. They've also scheduled the finance closing for the residential portion of the project, which is phase 2. If you have driven by the site, you will probably have noticed that the construction for phase 1, which is the hotel, is well underway. And actually today, the mayor and Director Golden and our senior staff, among others, were able to, with the development team, distribute $400,000 to upwards of 10 entities in Roxbury who are the recipients of the community benefits funding that was provided through this project. So progress is moving very swiftly, and we are in a very good place. And this particular extension really is to allow for the time frame during which the finance closing will take place, which is anticipated for mid-November.
Okay, great.
And
Thank
the
you,
development
Dana.
team is here to answer questions.
Any questions on the board?
You're promising that this is going to be the last one.
I am.
Well, I can't speak for the rest of the board, but I'm inclined to promise that this might be the last extension. This is a neighborhood where within a quarter of a mile of this development, we've approved hundreds of new housing units, support in a variety of ways from Dudley down Tremont Street in the other direction. It's clearly a neighborhood that is benefiting from investment attention. And it's a neighborhood that clearly needs the parking. And it's a neighborhood that would clearly benefit from the retail benefits that are promised from this. And for a long time, it's been a neighborhood that everyone agrees would benefit from having a cultural institution there. We've approved numerous extensions in a neighborhood where it doesn't appear that other folks have had difficulty raising investment capital and moving forward with the construction. And as much as I appreciate the fact that community benefits have been distributed as of earlier today, the main community benefit is getting this project done. And so I have to say that at least from my own perspective, if this comes before us again, there's going to be huge reluctance in approving another extension. And maybe we haven't been clear enough about that in the past. But this is a benefit to this community, and it needs to get done.
Duly noted.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
I'll move it.
Okay.
Second.
Second. All's in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dana. I'm going to read the next three, and we'll take one vote on the three of them. This is for certificate of completions. Item number 19, request authorization to issue a certificate of completion for the western portion of the Belvedere Dalton project located at 30 Dalton Street in the Back Bay. Item number 20, request authorization to issue a certificate of completion for the 131 Beverly Street portion of the Lovejoy Wharf project. Item 21, request authorization to issue a certificate of completion for the Forecaster building located at 121 through 127 Portland Street in the Bullfinch Triangle. A motion is in order?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Item number 22 is removed. Item number 23, request authorization to issue a certificate of approval in accordance with the Article 80B Small Project Review of the Zoning Code for construction of 36 resident rental units, including 5 IDP units, 720 square feet of ground floor retail space, 400 square feet of lobby galley space, and 22 off-street parking spaces and 38 bicycle spaces located at 233 Hancock Street, and to recommend approval to the Board of Appeal for the necessary zoning relief, and to take all related actions.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Director Golden, Madam Secretary, and members of the board. 233 Hancock LLC filed a small project review application with the BPDA on July 24th, 2017 for the redevelopment of the site at 233 Hancock Street in Dorchester. The project site is located at the intersection of Hancock Street and Pleasant Street and is situated 1 block west of Dorchester Avenue. The proposed project includes the demolition of the existing auto body shops on site and the construction of a new 5-story mixed-use building totaling 29,465 square feet. The BPDA hosted 2 public meetings to discuss this project, the first of which was held on August 14th and the second on September 25th. Both were well attended, and the comment period ended on September 29th. Over 50 comment letters were received, with the vast majority of these being supportive of the project. Hancock Street Civic Association and Meeting House Hill Civic Association both voted in support of the project, while the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services and City Councilor Frank Baker have also demonstrated their strong support. The proposed project is seeking zoning relief for several variances. BPDA staff believe that the proposed project is consistent with ongoing development in the Dorchester Neighborhood District. After considerable design review, the requested variances are appropriate for the proposal. Of the 36 total units in the proposed project, there will be 5 IDP units, 2 of which will have a disability preference. Also, 2 of these IDP units will have a neighborhood diversity preservation preference, making them available to current residents of the neighborhood at risk of displacement. The proponent will be making community contributions totaling $15,000. A $5,000 contribution will be made to the St. Mary's Center for Women and Children. A $5,000 contribution will be made to the Boys and Girls Clubs of Boston, and a $5,000 contribution will be made to Cape Verdean Community UNITA. Additionally, the lobby gallery space of the building will be curated by artwork from a community arts organization. At this point, I'd like to call upon project proponent Benji Mole to briefly introduce his firm and the unique intentions of this development. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Aisling. Thank you, board. My name is Benji Mall. I'm one of the founders and principals of ARCS Urban. We are a mission-driven real estate investment firm based out of Boston with the goal of creating mixed income housing. The goal for this project is to have housing that is primarily focused for individuals making between $50,000 and $100,000 a year. The goal of the project is to be at a discount while providing Class A units, be at a discount to the other Class A projects in the neighborhood. We first came to this neighborhood roughly 3 years ago when we bought a building across the street that was 37 units and was on the city's bad property task force. We worked with the city, the neighborhood, and with the tenancy to avoid as much displacement as possible while turning the building around, and have since had it removed from the city's bad property task force list. This project is the next logical step in what we've been working on Hancock Street, in addition to a few other parcels that we also own down the street. Without further ado, I will let Eric, our architect from Rhodey, speak about the design of the project.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Benji. Chairman, members of the board, I'm not sure if I can say anything more about the project. I can give you a little architectural history, but I think the mission of this project in my neighborhood of Dorchester is super exciting, and these guys are doing what they're saying and preaching what they're doing, and it's super exciting to be involved in this. So I think we went through the sort of the specifics of the project. Here's just a list of sort of the really widespread outreach with great success, a lot of shaping of the project from different aspects through the community process, which has been awesome. So quickly, just sort of where we are here, it's a little bit hard to see, but 233 Hancock Street is sort of adjacent to sort of the large project of dot block. So this is certainly something that I think is kind of feeding off kind of the excitement associated with the dot block project. We looked at sort of a lot of the urban context of the existing conditions as well as dot block. And so here's sort of just the snapshot. The orange box represents sort of the location of it. It sort of sets the terminus of Pleasant Street and Hancock Street. This is now looking back Hancock Street with the parcel on the right-hand side, orange, back to Dorchester Avenue. So it really is at a transitional point with 2 view corridors setting up the project. Quickly, just sort of our design philosophy and build up. So the site, 13,361, looking at max building height of 70 feet. Through that process, we lowered that down to 5 stories, and we took off a roof deck. So there was a lot of neighborhood discussion about the height and the mass and the density of the building. Then we started to sort of shape the architecture of the building to respond to those view corridors, pushing and pulling the massing, and then also starting to introduce some architectural elements in terms of the facade treatment, as well as the sidewalk and the streetscape, which is we think a big piece of this project, because there really isn't a place there yet. So what we're trying to do is figure out how to make something happen at this point, since Doblog is not moving forward in terms of construction yet. This will be ahead of that as far as we can tell. So here's just a quick ground floor plan looking at sort of how we're fronting the building and the public space to Hancock Street to try to provide some relief. Here's a sort of an axon of that, because we think it's really critical to give some site and space for this building at street level, clear entrances to both the residential as well as the gallery and small retail space on the edge. So here's just a couple quick images. You can sort of see the site here. The billboards are actually up on the hill behind. As part of this project, they are also trying to take down the billboards. So that was something that the neighborhood was very excited to hear. So the site sort of happens in this kind of area here. There's a car wash next to us, and then an old car dealership to the right. So it's really wedged in a place that is transforming, hopefully. So then here's our proposed project. You can sort of see how the architecture is reflecting those view corridors, creating a larger volume and access point at the end of Pleasant Street, and then creating some breaking of the massing to indicate the entry sequence into the residence. Changing materials. We're using masonry as the darker material that's set back, and we're looking at a Symbonite or a sort of heavier duty panel system in the lighter gray and white area. Here's the sort of looking back up Hancock Street view, and you can sort of see this is the site. And then the introduction of the proposed project here with sort of the architectural elements sort of affronting the view corridor, as well as creating a little bit of an interesting edge here with some natural materials on the sort of larger volume as we face down Hancock Street. And that's where we are.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions from the board?
I have a question for you.
Mr. Moynihan has a question.
Eric, I like the project, but how high is at the bottom of the billboard, or at the top of that hill?
Yep.
How high is that compared to here? I guess what I'm getting at is...
So that's a great question, and that's a slide I removed from the, so the top of the building and the top of the billboards.
The bottom of the billboard. Bottom of the billboard.
So, where's the bottom?
I guess what I'm getting at is how, if we could have went higher and you wouldn't have been blocking anybody's view because of the hill.
That's right.
We would have, so this was a conversation that we had with a lot of the abutters. There are 2 abutters behind the project where we would have been blocking their view. And so ultimately we started at 6 stories and took it down to 5 because those abutters were concerned that their views would be blocked.
Would it have been though?
So you can sort of see, this is maybe the best image of it. So our current top of our building is basically coplanar with the top of the billboards.
Oh, it is?
Now. Yes.
Is the billboard blocking their view now?
No, right?
It's about halfway up their first story of their floor.
So the second, third story are fine?
Yeah.
And the top of the building as originally proposed would have been halfway up the billboard? So
No, the proposed building would have been another story above the billboards.
Okay. Above the billboard, so the second floor of those houses would have been.
Yeah.
How many additional affordable units would have been created if you were able to build?
More.
One more?
And we're working with various organizations to try to create the middle income housing from a capital financing standpoint, which theoretically our goal is to try to create a few more anyway. But in general, we're over the IDP requirements, and that would have only added 1 more unit.
Thank you.
I have more of a I guess, a comment than a question. I do just want to recognize that you are exercising the neighborhood preference program, new thing that we now allow, and I think that's great. Also, I think it was great that you had kind of 19 different meetings and things like that. I know that that's a lot, but and I want to recognize that that's great. But I do want to encourage, since you may have other, developments or projects, is really to think outside of the box as developers of how we make contact with the community outside of maybe a traditional meeting structure. I think I've said in other meetings, we do the best we can with the resources that we have, but I think there is some investment, whether it's in technology or text messaging or just finding different ways outside of like a meeting structure at 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock or whatever, just to accommodate different people and their schedules. So just some feedback, but you did great outreach, and I like the neighborhood preference.
Thank you. Okay, are there any further questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you.
you.
Congratulations. Item number 24, request authorization to issue a determination pursuant to Section 80A-6 of the zoning code in connection with the second notice of project change for the 99 Tremont Street Apartments project from 62 rental units to 62 home ownership units, including 8 IDP units, and to take all related actions. Lance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Director Golden, Madam Secretary. On January 29th, 2004, 99 Tremont Street was originally approved by this board as a residential project consisting of 69 units and 94 parking spaces, 69 home ownership units. On January 15th, 2015, Tremont Street project had its first NPC approved by this board as a residential rental project consisting of 62 units with 91 parking spaces, 62 rentals. Today, we're asking the board for a full circle switch back to condominiums to 62 units and 91 parking spaces. The IDP units will remain at 8. There will be no other program change, no building mass increase, no floor area ratio whatsoever. The project is located within a multifamily residential subdistrict, which is governed by Article 51, and the second project does not require any additional zoning relief. Jim Kelleher, the project proponent, is here to answer any questions for the board members.
Okay, thank you, Lance. Are there any questions from the board?
Were any design changes made or required as a result of the change?
Jim Keller, no. There was no design changes.
That's clear.
Yeah.
Are there any further questions or comments? Okay, motion's in order?
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you, Lance.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Item number 25, request authorization to issue a scoping determination waiving further review pursuant to Article 80, Section 80B-5.3D of the zoning code, large project review for the construction of 65 residential condominium units, including 8 IDP units, 9,000 square feet of ground retail and lobby space, 88 below-level parking spaces located at 87 through 93 West Broadway, and to recommend approval to the Board of Appeal for the necessary zoning relief and to take all related actions. Michael.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman Burke, Director Golden, Madam Secretary, members of the board. As mentioned, the proposed project is located at 87 and 93 West Broadway in South Boston and is currently occupied by a gas station with access from West Broadway and A Street. The proponent proposes to construct an approximately 98,000 square foot building that would contain 65 residential condominium units and 9,000 square feet of ground floor retail space and lobby space, as well as approximately 88 below-level garage spaces accessed from a new driveway along Silver Street. 2 retail spaces are planned for the ground floor, which will help continue activation along West Broadway. The project is in compliance with the inclusionary development policy and will be including 8 IDP units within the building. The project site is located within the South Boston Neighborhood District, which is in Article 68 of the Code. This allows for new multifamily residential and mixed-use buildings, but certain dimensional characteristics of the proposed building would require relief from zoning. It should be noted that the BPDA is in the process, with city officials and neighborhood participants, of updating the zoning of both East Broadway and West Broadway. The proposed project was designed taking into consideration anticipated new building height and massing limitations on West Broadway. As for the Article 80 process, the proponent filed a project notification form on June 21st, and the BPDA held a public meeting and 2 IAG meetings to discuss the project and receive feedback from the community. A small number of people did show concern around height and density of the project, but the majority of IAG members and public were supportive of the proposal. The design of the building was also an interest among members of the IAG, and it should be noted that the proposal did receive approval from the Boston Civic Design Commission on October 3rd, and the proponent will continue to meet with BPDA urban design staff for ongoing design review. Through working with the IAG, the development team has also agreed to contribute $50,000 towards services for residents of South Boston. Upon receipt of funds, BPDA staff will release a request for application for community benefits, which will be available to the public and posted on the BPDA website. The development team has also agreed to contribute $25,000 towards the funding of a hubway station in the area. BPDA staff feels this project will help continue the improvements to the streetscape along West Broadway, and is recommending approval of the proposal. I'll now turn it over to George Moranci and be happy to answer any questions after the presentation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Michael.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman, members. My name is George Moranci. I'm the project zoning attorney. Our architect is en route, and he's not here, so I'm going to present the project and the plans to the best of my ability. First, I'd like to thank, obviously, the development review staff here at the BPDA, particularly Michael Rooney, and also the urban design staff, particularly David Carlson, as he also quarterbacked the effort with the Boston Civic Design Commission. As Michael said, BCDC gave final approval to this just last week. I think the result is that it's a much stronger project and a much better building. This is located at the corner of A and West Broadway. The site is approximately in the middle of that slide, across a private way, a private right-of-way from the District C6 Boston Police Station, which is just about in the middle of that slide. It's a gas station. It's been a gas station for many, many years. The project would replace this with a new 65-unit residential building. Closer look at the site and the zoning. As you can see, it is on the cusp of the growth zone, the Dorchester Avenue neighborhood plan. As Michael said, though, it is, in fact, firmly in the MFR LS district under Article 68. As Michael also said, Article 68, it's our understanding and belief that there will be some kind of a modification to the zoning on West Broadway. The notion, and my office is on West Broadway, I'm about 3 blocks from the site, and what we have heard consistently over the past couple of years, and I'm including from community officials, civic officials, representatives of local neighborhood groups, is that the thinking is that the height and density on West Broadway should be greater between Broadway Station and the Hall Road. And the Hall Road is actually just to the right of the site. If you go over 5 parcels as the board is looking at this slide, that on the edge of the slide is the Hall Road. So the thinking is that the height is going up about 70 feet to the Hall Road, and then it will be something less. So higher height and density between Broadway Station and the Hall Road. That's existing conditions at the site. It's a gas station with a small convenience store and a large canopy over a couple of pump islands. That's just an aerial view of the site. Again, what's most prominent is the canopy over the pump islands. This is a view from the corner of West Broadway and A Street. The site right now benefits from, and I think the public streets and the public traffic are burdened by expansive curb cuts on both the A Street side of the property and the West Broadway side of the property, which will be closed up. It's virtually that entire corner from where you can see the existing building on A Street to the police station. It's almost entirely open for curb cuts for the gas station, which will be closed. This is the proposed building from the West Broadway elevation. Again, the building comes up to just about 70 feet. This is the A Street elevation. This is the left side elevation, which abuts the passageway or the right-of-way between the project site and the police station. And this would be the Silver Street elevation. Silver Street is a 20-foot public way, one of the smallest streets in South Boston without parking to the rear of the site. This is the building section, which is interesting and I think helps you understand the project. On the right side is is Broadway. The cutaway shows the slight difference in, not in grade, but certainly the difference in the grade approaches to the building from Silver Street, which is actually allowing us to provide drive-in access to a mechanical parking system below the or to the rear of the first floor, the ground floor retail space on West Broadway. This is a proposed site and ground floor plan, and again, you can see that the access to the site either comes down Silver Street or it comes down the private way from West Broadway to Silver Street and then into the garage, which is located to the back. This would use a mechanical stacker system for the parking. This is the ground floor setbacks and landscape plan. One of the concerns from just about everybody during the process was the desire for widened sidewalks and particularly a responsive treatment to the A and West Broadway intersection, which is prominent, or the A and West Broadway corner of the building. So you can see there is an increased setback at the A and West Broadway portion. There would be new street trees and wider sidewalks, as well as accessible pedestrian access around the site, including a widening of the sidewalk on Silver Street. Another interesting feature of the project is the roof. There would be this is obviously a rooftop landscaping plan, which is showing a significant amount of activated green space on the roof of the building. There would be seating areas, dog walk areas, and a lot of true green space on the roof of the building. This is showing the proposed building in a rendering format on different sides of the building. The architect, who is not here, did inform me that one of the last changes made by BCDC was the removal of that canopy. And the architect's behind me. Do you want to take over, Doug?
Whatever. You're doing great.
This is a close-up.
You're doing fine.
Yeah. Oh, okay. This is a close-up of the view of the A Street corner treatment, which was, again, a significant concern of your urban design staff and of BCDC. And this was the result, which I think provides for, a nice corner with some opportunity to have some active uses at the corner rather than just a building, walled down to the sidewalk. Finally, or close to finally, that's an existing view, not a particularly attractive view of the site, and that is a very nice rendering that Doug did of the building at night.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. You did a great job. Are there any questions from the board?
Just a comment. I'm always pleased to see an attorney present an architectural presentation as well as you just did.
I do just have a couple questions. So I like the trees and the roof looks really interesting. And is that going to be year-round, like open year-round? And
Roof?
Yeah.
Yes, the roof is a combination of both private and public spaces.
So there is public space.
Yeah, there are common areas to the lower left, and the central area to the right has common spaces available. There's handicap access, obviously. Yes, it's intended to be used year-round.
Okay. And how would you access it if it's wait?
Well,
so is it common space to the public, or are you saying common space to the right? Right, that's private.
Yeah, it'll be
to the
common, but
residents. Okay.
yeah, for the
For the residents.
For the residents. Okay. All right, and my second question is around gas stations. So Just, I'm one of those people that don't have a car, but when I do have get a zip car,
There-
stuff, I
there
find it
are
really hard
some
to get
there are
gas like
stations-
in the area. You know,
there
like
are.
there's only a couple.
Yes.
So I just want to get an understanding of like how. I just want to make sure that we're not, you know, taking away needed amenities.
It did come up, Ms. Ross, absolutely. There were some concerns in the community, so I guess for every few people who are happy to see a more, a better-looking corner situation on such a prominent intersection, there are a number of people who lament the fact that they're running out of places to get gas. In South Boston, there is a gas station a couple blocks from here on Old Colony Ave. There is a gas station at L and 4th Street. Yeah, right, and across the expressway, there's the gas station off of Albany Street, which is not too far. But it is a concern because there are fewer and fewer gas stations in the city, not just South Boston, but everywhere.
Okay, thank you. Further questions?
Great building, Judge. With the excavation of the earth for the parking, are you going to be able to get rid of the contaminated soil?
It's a pretty clean site.
Is it? Wow.
Yeah, it's a pretty clean site, because if you remember, Mr. Monahan, when the tanks were replaced several years ago, I don't know for a fact, but I assume that if there was any sort of contamination at that time, it would have been cleaned as part of the tanks replacement. So we were very surprised when we got the 21E from the current owners my clients are purchasing from, and it's essentially a clean 21E.
Okay, if there's no further questions, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you very much.
Good luck. Item number 26. Request authorization to issue a determination pursuant to Section 80A-6 of the zoning code in connection with the notice of project change for the North Point project, increasing the height and reducing the square footage of the Boston portion, and to execute an amend and restate stated development regulatory agreement, and to take all related actions. Raul.
Good afternoon, Chairman Burke, Director Golden, Madam Secretary, members of the board. The item before you this evening is the Boston portion of the North Point development, located on a triangular-shaped 45.37 acre parcel, the majority of which is located in Cambridge, and significantly smaller portions in Somerville and Boston. The Boston portion of the development site consists of approximately 1.3 acres and comprises about 3% of the overall development site. The Boston portion is bound by MBTA rail lines to the north and the Gilmore Bridge to the east. The BRA board first approved this project on December 29, 2003. The 2003 North Point Boston project consisted of 325,000 square feet of office, laboratory, and retail space in portions of two 15-story buildings referred to as buildings G and H, and included 430 off-street parking spaces. The portions of both buildings in Boston would be a maximum of 150 feet high. Since that time, DivCo West acquired the site and submitted a notice of project change to revise certain aspects of the project. The revised proposal before you today consists of approximately 270,178 square feet of office, laboratory, and research and development space in portions of two buildings, again referred to as buildings G and H, and include approximately 339 off-street parking spaces. The revisions to the previously approved project include the following: a reduction of approximately 54,822 square feet of building area, an increase in height for building G from 150 feet to 248 feet, including mechanical areas, an increase in height for building H from 150 feet to approximately 175 feet, including mechanicals, and a reduction in the number of off-street vehicle parking spaces from 430 to 339. With respect to the Article 80 review process, the proponent submitted a notice of project change on September 1st, 2017. This set forth in motion a public comment period which concluded on October 3rd. During this time period, the BPDA held a publicly advertised community meeting at Bunker Hill Community College on September 6, 2017, to review and solicit feedback on the proposed revisions to the Boston portion of the project. Subsequently, on September 28th, the proponent submitted supplemental information. These materials were distributed to different city agencies, elected officials, and neighborhood associations. Again, during the review process, the revised project also underwent review by the Boston Civic Design Commission, and the BCDC ultimately approved the project on October 3rd, 2017. At this time, I'd like to introduce you to Mark Johnson from DIVCO West to further presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Raul.
Thank you for hearing us this evening. My name is Mark Johnson. I'm Director of Development for DIVCO West. DIVCO West is a real estate firm with offices in Boston and San Francisco. Since 1993, it has acquired more than 30 million square feet of commercial, tech office, and R&D space. In Boston, DIVCO West has owned 333 Summer Street, 1 Winthrop Square, and several properties in downtown Crossing. It also owned 1 Kendall Square in Cambridge. We're here tonight to request 2 approvals for North Point related to an increase in the allowable building height, which I'll describe. The first is a notice of project change to an approval granted by the BRA in 2003. The second approval is an amendment to the regulatory agreement that was last updated in 2014 by the previous owner of North Point, the HYM Investment Group. HYM sold North Point to DIVCO West in 2015. While they are no longer the owner, we have retained HYM as project manager, and they're still a very important part of our development team. DIVCO West's goal is to develop North Point as quickly as market conditions allow. This effort started by updating the existing master plan approvals in Cambridge and Somerville in 2016. This slide shows the master plan in 2003 with G and H in the upper right-hand corner here. You can see about 3% of North Point is in Boston. It is important to note that there are no Boston parks, streets, or sidewalks within North Point. This slide shows the master plan as it evolved in 2012. At that time, the number of parking spaces at North Point was reduced from 4,980 to 3,807. This slide shows the master plan today. DIVCO West focused on creating a sense of place with a retail core in the center of the development, as well as additional open space. We also want to create a commercially viable parcels at G and H that would meet market demand. There were no changes to the overall 4.6 million square feet plan for the site or for the breakdown between residential and commercial uses. Because of the rail yard to the north, automobile access to North Point is solely from Cambridge. However, the site offers important pedestrian and bicycle connections between the Orange Line Community College Station, located here, and the Green Line Leechmere MBTA station, which is here and will be moving here. It also provides important connections between Charlestown and East Cambridge. This slide shows the site today adjacent to the MBTA rail yards here, the elevated I-93, the Gilmore Bridge, the Brian Murphy staircase here at the foot of this apartment building, the 2020 apartment building. This portion of our site presents unique conditions and is the most challenging corner of our site, parcels G and H. This is a view seen when walking across the Gilmore Bridge from Charlestown to North Point, with the 2020 building on the right. This is that same view in the proposed state with building H in front of the 2020 building and building G beside it. You'll note a landscape buffer along the northern edge of the rail yard. As one continues to walk along the Gilmore Bridge towards North Point, this is the proposed view along parcel H pending MassDOT approval. A row of trees is introduced at bridge level, and a second sidewalk is located on the other side of the trees to the right. Instead of walking between 2 Jersey barriers, this will be a welcoming entrance from Boston to North Point and to East Cambridge. Beyond building H, we are proposing a widened plaza at the top of the Murphy staircase, shown here. At this point, one can walk along the colonnade and enter building H at bridge level, or go down the Murphy staircase, or an accessible elevator into North Point. Here's a site plan at bridge level that shows the widened sidewalk here along the Gilmore Bridge, and the plaza, and the Murphy staircase, and building H, and building G. You will note the diagonal Boston city boundary, diagonal city boundary running through the site here. The 2002 BRA approval for the portions of G and H that are located in Boston was based on 325,000 square feet of office lab space and 430 off-street parking spaces. The current proposal is below that threshold with 270,000 square feet and 339 parking spaces. In order to create marketable parcels at this challenging location, we're requesting an increase in height on parcels G and H. In 2003, both G and H were thought to be 150-foot tall, 15-story commercial buildings with less than 10-foot high floor-to-floor heights. In the intervening years, floor-to-floor heights and rooftop mechanical penthouse sizes for a commercial lab and office space have increased. Even though the lab building on parcel G has 12 occupiable above-grade floors, it now has a height of 248 feet. And this is below the height limit established by the master plan in Cambridge. The office building on H, which has 10 occupiable floors, is 175 feet tall. Even though the buildings are taller than originally improved, they have fewer stories, and they are separated from the Charlestown neighborhood by the rail yards and the elevated Interstate 93. The buildings are over 600 feet from any part of Charlestown, over 1,100 feet from any Charlestown residents, and over 1,400 feet from the closest Boston City Park. This is a view of G&H from Green Street in Charlestown across the elevated Interstate 93, and despite the increase in height, G&H are barely visible. This left image shows shadows at the equinox and at the right at the winter solstice. Shadows from both buildings fall only on the rail yards, except for less than 1 hour in late December and early January when a part of the shadow from G crosses the elevated highway. Parcels G and H have negligible sky view or shadow impact on Boston. I'll show you some views of the building. Here we see parcel H with the widened sidewalk along the Gilmore Bridge and the plaza at the top of the Murphy staircase. H has a vertical facade expression with facade window pattern designed with solar exposure in mind. The parapet rises up to the northeast corner, facing Boston, creating what we call the prow of the ship. This is a view from Interstate 93 looking to the south with G in the center and H to the left. The folds in the facade of G break up its perceived length. The balcony on the west reduces the scale next to the open space. The balcony on the east is the same height as building H next door. The windows on H are different sizes, which create a pattern that further reduces the scale of that facade. As is referenced in the board memo, Cambridge design review of parcels G and H is underway, and the designs have been well received in Cambridge. We held what we believe to be the first joint meeting between staff in Cambridge and in Boston, we look forward to an ongoing dialogue with both cities. And if any refinements to the design are required as a result of Cambridge design review, we will work with BCDC and BPDA staff to make them. This is a summary of the public benefits of the project. Approximately 2,500 housing units near downtown, $1.4 million in linkage payments, additional tax revenue, linkages, pedestrian linkages between East Cambridge and Boston. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from the board? No. Pretty simple. There's no questions, so a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Good luck with the project.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take a brief... Oh, wait, afterward. Okay, after the next one, we're going to take a brief break. Sorry.
So it's not in Boston.
Item number 27. Request authorization to adopt the Second Amendment to the report and decision for the Bridgeview Apartments Chapter 121A project. on parcel P-15-2C-4, located at 40 Rutherford Ave, Charlestown Urban Renewal Area, for additional financing. Renee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Director, members of the board. This approval is seeking, this request is seeking your approval for the second amendment to the report and decision on the Bridgeview Apartments Chapter 121A project. The Bridgeview Apartments project is located at 330 to 400 Rutherford Avenue in Charlestown Navy Yard neighborhood, and it is also located on an urban renewal parcel that we conveyed. In 2016, we voted a certificate of completion for the project, but as part of the Chapter 121A regulatory oversight of the project, we are approving additional financing. The project received approximately $1.4 million in state brownfields tax credits, and so we'd like to approve that additional financing and authorize the director to enter into agreements regarding the existing loan documents.
Okay, thank you, Renee. Are there any questions from the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Thank you.
We're going to take a brief 5-minute recess. Is that okay, Tammy?
Raise my hands like one of that. So that's up.
Anytime. This is a public hearing before the Boston Redevelopment Authority, doing business as the Boston Planning and Development Agency, being held in conformance with Article 80 of the Boston Zoning Code, to consider the second amendment to the Boston University Medical Center Institutional Master Plan, consisting of the renovation and expansion of BUMC Goldman School of Dental Medicine, located at 100 East Newton Street in South End. This hearing was duly advertised on September 28, 2017 in the Boston Herald. In a Boston Planning and Development Agency hearing on a proposed petition by the agency, staff members will first present their case and are subject to questioning by members of the authority. Thereafter, others who wish to speak in favor of the proposed petition are afforded an opportunity to do so under the same rules of questioning. Following that, those who wish to speak in opposition may do so again under the same rules of questioning. Finally, the proponents are allowed a period of 5 to 10 minutes for rebuttal if they desire. In an effort to accommodate all who would like to speak about this proposal, each person will be given up to 2 minutes to comment. BPDA staff will indicate when 30 seconds remain. At that time, please conclude your remarks so that the hearing may continue and others may be heard. Michael will now present.
Thank you. Good evening, Chairman Burke and members of the board. This is to consider the Second Amendment to the Boston University Medical Center Institutional Master Plan. The project site is located at 100 East Newton Street at the intersection of East Newton Street and Albany Street, and it's surrounded by Boston Medical Center's Newton Pavilion property. Boston University Medical Center is proposing to substantially rehab and construct a new addition to their Goldman School of Dental Medicine building. The new addition will be approximately 41,900 square feet, bringing the building to a total of approximately 126,100 square feet. The proposed project is subject to the Boston University Medical Center Institutional Master Plan, which was approved by the BRA on June 22, 2010. On May 15, 2017, the proponent submitted an Institutional Master Plan notification form along with a project notification form for the proposed project. The BPDA sponsored a task force and public meeting on June 8th to discuss the proposal and receive community feedback. The comment period ended on June 15th. The BPDA then issued a scoping determination on July 5th, setting forth the requirements of the second IMP amendment and asking the proponent to respond to feedback from BPDA staff, city agencies, and the public. On August 7th, the proponent filed the second IMP amendment, and the BPDA sponsored another task force and public meeting to discuss and receive community feedback. The IAG and public were supportive of the project, but some abutters did show concerns around the construction of the building, as they felt it could possibly affect their home foundations. The proponent brought in an expert in this field to help respond to these concerns and has also offered to take before and after images of the abutters' properties. BPDA and BPD staff did show concern around the loading dock location of the proposal, as it could impact the pedestrian zone on Albany Street. The proponent has agreed to work with any future development adjacent to their site to move the loading dock underground and away from the public realm as a future condition. BPDA and BPD staff feel the proposed temporary condition does improve on the current condition and is the best alternative due to site constraints. Through working with the task force and BPDA and other city agencies, the proponent has agreed to contribute $60,000 towards multimodal improvements throughout Albany Street corridor. Moving forward, the proponent will work in close coordination with the BPDA and BTD as the vision for the Albany Street corridor continues to evolve and take shape. This proposal is also subject to a development impact project payment and will be contributing $792,300 towards housing linkage and $158,650 towards jobs linkage. BPDA staff feels its renovation and expansion of the dental school will not only be a great benefit to Boston University, but will also help bring some much needed improvements to the streetscape along Albany Street and around the project site. I'll now turn it over to the development team and be happy to answer any questions after the presentation.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman Burke, members of the BRA Board. My name is Michael Donovan. I'm Vice President for Real Estate and Facility Services at Boston University. And on behalf of the university, thank you for considering our Second Amendment to the Boston University Medical Center Institutional Master Plan pursuant to the expansion and renovation of the Goldman School of Dental Medicine at 100 East Newton Street. I just want to put the schedule up more or less just to illustrate, I'd say, a couple of things. As a result of this process, and I mean this sincerely, we've had well over 20 design changes to the project since we've gone through the public process, and that involves city agencies as well as the neighborhood groups. And my sincere comment is that whenever we go through this process, we always get a better design, and I think in this case we did get a better design. The other thing that I wanted to just raise as well is that through our community meetings, I think it's fair to say that the community endorsed the project from the get-go. It is a school of dental medicine that trains dentists and doctoral candidates who already have their dental degrees to develop specialty areas in dental medicine. And so it's a school, but it also has a very, very important position in the community as a clinic, and I'll talk about that. And I think that's probably the major drawing point, and one of the reasons why we had such good support from the neighborhood is because they realize that not only is this a school, but to them, more fundamentally, it's a clinic. So we did get, I think, and we're very happy with this, and we're happy with the involvement from the task forces and the IAG groups, their support for the project. Just to orient you a little bit in terms of site context, I'll go through this very quickly. The Goldman School of Dental Medicine is over at Boston University's medical campus in the South End. It's one of 3 schools and colleges, which include the School of Medicine, the School of Public Health, as well as the School of Dental Medicine. We have 835 students at the school, and it is located right there. I'm sorry, it's kind of hard to see, but here's Albany Street, and it's on the corner of Albany Street and East Newton Street. Faculty and staff levels are 400, 200, and 200 respectively. The clinical mission of the dental school, we have within our database, calling as patients, 33,000 patients. And over the course of a year, we book about 147,000 patients for all kinds of services, from general dentistry, excuse the dentist in the room, that for drill and fill, to more elaborate types of treatments, endodontics, orthodontics, et cetera, oral and maxillofacial surgery, et cetera. So again, the community sees it, I think, as a very, very important dental health center for the provision of care for them. The dental school also is very deeply involved in the community. They have about 100 community-based dental programs serving Boston as well as the Metro Boston community. And last but not least, about 1/3 of the patient population that the dental school sees are on Mass Health. So that is, this school that has a very large clinic in it is their source of dental care. Related to the area, it is not in the South End Landmarks District, but it is in the protected area. So we were acutely aware of that as we were developing our design, and that was voiced to us obviously through the public process as well, through various city agencies. This is the existing facility that you see on the corner of East Newton Street and Albany Street. It is a original design back in 1967 when it was built. Was through the Architects Collaborative, Walter Gropius's firm, and the tack design is in the brutalist style. And my understanding through our architects and through hearing through various commentary through various city agencies and those who actually are architects is that the basement and the first 3 floors, when they were built in 1967 in this brutalist style, the comments that we heard back from some of the architects is that, yes, it is brutalist technically, but it doesn't really have the heft, it doesn't really have the elbow room to really present itself as a very strong model for brutalist architecture. I think we probably complicated it a little bit more in 1973 when we added 4 stories on top of that podium for more clinical space and for office space. And frankly, these shots here look like they're in the dead of winter. They actually probably make the building look a little bit better than it really is. It really does look like 2 distinct buildings, particularly when you get above here, north here, above the 3rd floor. You can see how the windows look slightly different as you start to go up higher, and you could see a seam here. It's not a very attractive building, frankly. The interior spaces in the building are not particularly efficient either. Since these are 1967 and 1973 buildings, they're not very efficient from a clinical area, as technology seems to invade everything that we do, and that's true for dental care. Technology has gotten more and more into the operatories. There's more equipment, et cetera. So we've got spaces that are cramped and tight for patients, and although the patient care that we do provide is excellent, quite frankly, the patient experience is not. In terms of programming, we are expanding the dental school by 41,900 gross floor area. And it is in this L area that you see right here with my laser pointer. The existing dental school is right here. So basically what we're doing is a partial wrapper around here. This area will be a 7-story addition with basement, which will be composed of new clinical space as well as some office space, but predominantly clinical. Ground floor will have some student gathering space as well, and then we will have an addition, a 2-story addition on the back, which will be composed primarily of a large classroom. The primary focus of our program, because it is frankly so modest, the expansion is about 42,000 square feet of space. The renovation is 53,000 of the existing building. And then there's 31,000 square feet of which we are leaving alone. It really, the focus is on quality. It's not on quantity. I wanted to just draw to your attention the bottom here, and just in terms of building massing. Currently, we've got a building height of 103 feet. Our proposed is 104 and some change. And the allowable in the area under the Albany Street, Harrison Avenue zoning, which this is not obviously because this is subject to an institutional master plan, but just by way of a proxy is 120 feet. We are below that. We could have gone higher, but there was no need to do that. The focus again is on quality of space, not quantity, and really improving the instructional and clinical experience for our patients. This is our site plan where we had significant input from the BPDA and the BCDC on ways to improve the overall design. I want to point out a couple of things that are important. Probably first and foremost is that we're changing our entrance from where it is right now on East Newton Street to front on Albany Street, right here. And there will be a new patient entry right here. So we will have two entries, one here for patients, and then there will be another one right here on East Newton Street for our students and for our faculty. The reason why we're changing our front door to Albany Street is you all know that the Albany Street is undergoing some profound changes, and we want to be a part of that transformation, and it just makes sense that we should orient our design towards Albany Street. We're adding trees, as you can see there, and significant improvements to the public realm. And so far as here, it's very hard to see. I apologize for this, but this green area we're going to have embedded into the outside of the building. Very attractive plantings to soften the building and add to the aesthetics of the building. And then there will be some public realm space here as well. And this is the area where the red dot is. This is the Newton Pavilion, Boston Medical Center's hospital. So there will actually be some nice public realm there, patio, chairs, et cetera. ADA access will be provided in two areas. And we're also going to relocate a bus shelter, which is right here in very, very tight quarters, and move it down further west next to the Solomon Carter Fuller Building Plaza, which will allow for, frankly, a better bus shelter, more queuing for those that take the mass transit. One thing I do want to emphasize is that part of this expansion, which again we think is modest, we are not going to be adding any new faculty. We are not going to be adding any new students. And in terms of the net increase in terms of employees, probably will be a couple. So there will be negligible impacts insofar as parking and transportation into the area. Quickly, just in terms of design drivers here, this is a rendering of what the new school will look like. We're going to reclad the entire building using what our architects have called sort of a shirt and jacket concept, or another way of expressing it is putting it, the cladding of the exterior in layers. We're going to be using gray terracotta predominantly throughout the building, and then with new windows and these inserts here, which are red-brown phenolic treatments, this layering is going to add some texture, I think, and interest to the building, and it's actually going to unify the building, whereas right now it looks like two different buildings. Another major design feature is this porch here, which goes about up to the second floor, and it's going to be quite a greeting area, we think, and aesthetically very pleasing. And again, this is our patient entrance right here where you can walk right in. From a design and sustainability point of view, the R values on the roof are going to increase in efficiency by 300%, and our recladding of the building is going to improve our R values by 2,000%. This is my last slide here. Thank you for your patience. This is obviously what the building will look like at night. There's going to be ground floor activation. There's the lighting. That's going to be a very essential feature of the project. So it will look like it is active. The medical center has a tendency sometimes to shut and close down. It feels like it's 7 o'clock at night that it's quiet. We want to keep it active, so the building is going to reflect that. As Michael said, we want to be a part of the transformation of Albany Street. 233 jobs will be created for a total project cost of $86.3 million. Linkage payments will be in the vicinity of $950,000. And we're very happy to be involved in creating a bike lane on Albany Street. We have a lot of experience, as you know, on that over at the Charles River campus on Commonwealth Avenue, and we're proud to throw in our support for that as well. So with that, I'm going to stop my comments and look for your comments, any questions you might have.
Okay, thank you very much. I think what we're going to do is move on with the public hearing part of this, and then the board will have some questions afterward. So is there anyone that would like to speak in favor of this proposal, please step up and state your name. It's anyone that would like to speak in favor.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Gary Walker, Electricians, Local 103, I'd like to speak in strong support. BU has been a supporter of us for many years, and we'd like to also support them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for coming. Is there anyone else that would like to speak in favor of this proposal? Is there anyone that would like to speak in opposition? Anyone that would like to speak in opposition? Okay, fair enough. Are there any comments or questions from the board?
Yeah, I have a question. So, I mean, I think this is great. Expansion of the dental school, and I mean, this BU is part of what attracts talent to our city, and the output then stays in the city, but also, you know, around the world, really. But it still is in the city, and I guess I was a little concerned, and maybe I just don't quite understand from the comment letters, the concern about the negative impacts resulting from construction method and the foundations, and you said something about before and after pictures. I just want to, you know, make sure that there are, you know, the community is appropriately, that the risks are appropriately mitigated, and we've got plans just in case.
We did something, I think, that was extraordinary, and I've been involved in BU projects for quite some time, over several decades, and you know, we take very seriously, you know, what the neighbors have to say about this. The brownstones on East Brookline Street and some of the abutters there and the neighbors there have legitimate concerns. The water table, you hit around 8 or 9 feet. They're on wood piles. Any kind of vibration can disrupt a brick facade, so we need to pay careful attention to that. So what we did is we brought in actually an expert, and some of you I'm sure maybe know of, Dr. Brian Sweeney, who's with Haley and Aldrich, who more or less did a 101 or almost a mini symposium, if you will, on means and methods for construction for this project. Mm-hmm. And there were some very knowledgeable people on East Brookline Street that wanted to talk about foundation planning. And they had their own thoughts and ideas. Very, very sophisticated, thoughtful, reasonable people. And so what we did for a half an hour is we explained our means and methods in terms of how we're going to do that and how we're going to minimize vibration. And I'm just going to summarize that very quickly. It's going to cost us more in terms of doing what we're doing. We're also very, very vibration sensitive. And the reason that we're vibration sensitive like they are is that in some ways even more so, because we're going to continue to operate our dental school during this process. So we're going to have operatories in dental chairs doing their thing while we are doing construction. So vibration, when somebody, a dentist or a student, is working in the oral cavity, is absolutely critical for us. So we've got a medical and a dental issue, but we were respectful, I think, of what they had to say, which is why we're going to be doing some pre-construction surveying of those areas that are affected within the area of the construction, and then we're going to censor them throughout the construction process. And I know there's other development going on in the area. I don't think they're doing that. They're a little bit further away, but we think that's the right thing to do, and we're going to do the right thing. And I think they were happy with that, and we gave them ample time for Q&A with this expert. And so that's hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah.
And any further questions?
I guess just I have a comment, and that is that I think folks know I was involved with the merger of the BU Medical Center and City Hospital. Mm-hmm. And so I've always had a certain sense of the importance of this combined medical facility, particularly in this area. And so I'm delighted to see an expansion. And my only comment is that I wish that you didn't feel compelled to use the term modest so often. I would have done more. Given the changes in the neighborhood and the people who've moved into the neighborhood I mean, thousands and thousands of new residents, with more coming. It seems to me that there's an opportunity here to further expand and further transform the brand of what goes on here and who's served. I guess I would have had a facade that was maybe a little bit lighter, something that will in part be seen from the adjacent roadways. I mean, that's going to be the case at least for a while, an extended while. And it just seems to me that there's an opportunity here to present more of a signature of what the BU Medical Center has become, not just as a service area that serves thousands and thousands of people who need the clinic, but as a gateway to other kinds of services that are provided in this area. And you've got a very wide street to work with, so the streetscape improvements are good, but my guess is that there could be more that would really mark what goes on here in the same way that the power plant does.
Sure.
You know, people drive
exactly
by that
what you mean.
power plant and they say, oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, Union Park, I do. You know, Dr. Landsmark, it's interesting because you're almost sort of channeling, I think, some of the comments that BCDC had as well. And in some ways, these renderings don't do justice. Inevitably, they sometimes don't. The building, the terracotta, the palette that we're going to have is lighter. And I'm showing a shot here in the evening because it's dramatic. I want to introduce some drama, but you know, it will be a lighter palette. We were constrained in a lot of ways by the site. The site is a difficult site. We didn't have a lot of room to work with, and quite frankly, everything has a budget, and so there were some budget considerations that we had to involve as well. But most importantly, I think the thing that was interesting about the project is that the dental school started planning for this years ago, almost 7 or 8 years ago, and they did it, in our opinion, the right way. They did strategic planning first, rather than going out and saying, let's go out and build something. Let's ask ourselves, what do we need to do? What do we need to be in the future? And so they looked at themselves programmatically in terms of academically, instructionally, research, and they did a full Monty on that. And what that did is it translated into a space plan, and the space plan is reflected in that. So, you know, if the word modesty maybe is overused a little bit, you know, it's a reflection really of the strategic planning. This is what they need, they feel, for the next 20 years. And, you know, perhaps beyond that, as the area in Albany Street transforms, you know, maybe, you know, somebody will be up here the next time with BU and revisit that.
Well, there'll be other facilities, almost certainly.
I'm sure.
That you folks will be doing in this area, and I would strongly encourage you, as the campus expands, to think about what it means as a real kind of signature medical campus that is highly visible and speaks to the quality of work that the BU Medical Center and BCH have done in that location for many generations.
Agreed.
Okay.
Agreed. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further questions, a motion is in order.
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Request number 30, request authorization to enter into a memorandum of agreement with the City of Boston, acting by and through its Property Management Department, authorizing the use of security services at the China Trade Building located at 2 Boylston Street. Ed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Madam Secretary, Director Golden. This is the second half of the request I made during the EDIC meeting. This is a request to enter into a memorandum of agreement with the City of Boston for security services at the China Trade Building. As I think you have heard earlier, floors 1, 2, and 3 are now occupied. Last month, the board gave its authorization to enter into leases for floors 4 and 5. There is substantial interest for the 6th floor, which is the last remaining available floor. The MOA, as we did on the EDIC meeting, would be responsible for the period from February 1st, 2017 through June the 30th of 2018. Funds for the reimbursement are expected to come from BRA operating funds, and under the terms of the MOA, the security services for this building will not exceed $496,277.81. So it is therefore the staff's recommendation that the director be authorized to enter into an MOA with the City of Boston for security services at the China Trade Building. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that the staff might have, that the board might have.
Thank you, Ed. Are there any questions from the board? No. Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Ed. Item number 31, request authorization to expend $60,000 from the WGBH Project Community Benefits Fund to 7 community organizations in the Alston-Brighton neighborhood and to enter into grant agreements with said entities. Brian.
Good evening, Chairman Burke, members of the board, Director Golden, Madam Secretary. In 2004, the BRA board approved the WGBH project in the Alston-Brighton neighborhood of Boston. As part of this project, the developer contributed funds to be used for community benefit funding in the adjacent neighborhoods. In August of 2017, the Boston Planning and Development Agency released an application where organizations could apply for up to $60,000 in community benefit funding using the agency's newly piloted community benefit application. This new and innovative approach allows applicants to submit a detailed budget and comprehensive plan for how the money is to be used. Working with local elected officials and the mayor's office, we alerted various community organizations about the availability of these funds throughout the community benefit application process. The application and availability of funds was publicized on both the BPDA and OWD websites and social media accounts. The board's vote tonight will allow staff to issue these funds and enter into grant agreements with 7 community-based organizations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Any questions on the board?
No, I just want to say that I like the social media push. I saw that shared quite a few times, so we should keep doing that.
Will do.
Okay, motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Brian. Item number 32, request authorization to expend $75,000 from the Longwood Center Project Community Benefits Fund to 6 community organizations adjacent to the project and to enter into grant agreements with said entities. Brian.
Thank you, Chairman. In 2008, the BRA board approved the Longwood Center project in the Longwood medical area of Boston. As part of this project, the developer contributed funds to be used for community benefit funding in the adjacent neighborhoods. In August of 2017, the BPDA released an application where organizations could apply for up to $75,000 in community benefit funding using the agency's community benefit application. Again, working with local elected officials and the mayor's office, we alerted various community organizations about the availability of these funds throughout the benefit application process. The board's vote tonight will allow staff to issue these funds and enter into grant agreements with 6 community-based organizations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Any questions on the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Item number 33, contractual. Need a motion to pay the bills.
I move that the agency pay its bills.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 34, personnel. Janet?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Madam Secretary, and Director Golden. Jeanette Carlebel for the BPDA. We have a few items for your consideration on the BRA agenda. We have 2 travel items for your consideration with details listed in the board memos. The travelers are Chris Bush from the Planning Division and Trin Nguyen from OWD. We have 1 departure, Kristen Kara from the Director's Office, with details listed in the board memo. For your consideration, we have 1 administrative item to delegate signatory power and acting general counsel sign-off by the general counsel to Eileen Brophy, with details listed in the board memo. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Janet. Are there any questions on the board? Hearing none, a motion's in order?
So moved.
Second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 35 is the director's update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you to the members. Good evening. As you know, last year we engaged Continuum, a consultant, to assist this agency with a variety of reforms, internal reforms that build the agency's capacity, that build morale, that build our skill set in dealing with the public through our variety of processes. And in one of the working groups that we constituted to help us with that effort, we focused the energies of staff on partnering for greater impact. That is one of the working groups that was created in the wake of the Continuum consultancy. And the goal here is to improve the way we interact, improve the way we engage the public. Ms. Rojas referenced earlier in a discussion on one of the projects, the ability of the developer to engage people out in a neighborhood outside of conventional conversations in halls where the staff and the developer might present, and you have a call and a response dynamic. But there are a variety of different ways that we can engage, and a variety of different ways where we can reach people outside of traditional mechanisms, traditional venues. And one of those efforts we explored last week involved connecting with professionals in the real estate world so that they better understand our processes, who we are as individuals, what animates us, what our goals are, what we do and why we do it. So toward that end, we asked the Boston Society of Architects to host an event to help familiarize people in the professional world with Boston's development review process. Agency presenters from our staff included Jonathan Greeley, the Director of Development Review, Raul DeVerge, one of our project managers, and Corey Zengabot, who is a senior urban designer and architect here at the BPDA. A panel of external professionals representing a cross-section of disciplines we work with, architects, lawyers, developers, people in finance, also shared their experiences with and knowledge of BPA development review and planning and urban design processes. It was a terrific engagement, once again demystifying and connecting and learning from each other as we think about a more reform-minded way forward for this agency and the way it interacts with the people of Boston. About 125 people came, and by all accounts, it was a really edifying experience for all those who attended, including our own staff. Another thing we're doing differently here involves community benefits. Over the past several years, the Planning and Development Agency has updated its guidelines for releasing community benefits from a developer to community organizations. So when community benefits are not specifically outlined, delineated in a developer's cooperation agreement with us as part of the development review and ultimately the approval process, it is now generally BPDA practice to launch an open process for organizations to compete for and to apply for grants. So community organizations must prove that an award that is sought from some of these community benefit funds that flow from development projects, community organizations must demonstrate that they'll be used to support a specific program or provide a specific service that directly serves the neighborhood in order to be eligible for the funding. So all awards are ultimately subject to BPA board authorization. And as an illustrative example, last October 2015, this board approved the Melnia Cass Parcel 9 Hotel project in Roxbury, which allowed for the construction of a 135-room hotel. Phase 2 of the project will involve creation of 50 residential units. But as part of the project, the developer contributed $400,000 to the BPDA for the purpose of workforce development and training programs for local residents in the community. After a request for proposal process, the board approved 12 recipients of funds
At its meeting on August 10th, the mayor delivered those funds this morning out in Mission Hill. And it was a terrific encounter. Representatives from each of these groups that in most cases received a grant of between $20,000 and $50,000. These organizations are very much grassroots community organizations that deliver specific, tangible benefits and services to the neighborhood. They're really the beating heart of the neighborhood. So it's important for people to understand that when a development is permitted, it's not just about the housing that's created, and we work hard to create housing at all levels, middle income, lower income market. It's not just about the jobs that are created or the hotel rooms that will support visitors to Boston. It's also about these things that are sometimes more intangible associated with development, the actual financial benefits that flow to these community organizations that sort of knit the fabric of a neighborhood together. So we demonstrated that once again this morning. And thanks to our team at OWD, Brian Norton and Alex at OWD, who do a tremendous job sorting through applications and helping us ensure that we get funding into the hands of organizations that can deliver the maximum benefit for a neighborhood. Kristen Kara, tonight we're going to say goodbye to Kristen Kara. Her last day is next week. Kristen is currently the Deputy Director of Special Projects. She works directly in my office, has been a tremendous assistance to me as well as to prior directors that she has served. Kristen has been with the agency since 2002, and she has made significant contributions to the agency. Some of you actually may not be familiar with Kristen. She was a ubiquitous regular presence here for many years on board night, but she's currently on part-time hours because she has a young family and she's been spending time there, so she's not out late at night with us on board night anymore. But her work has had tremendous impact and has touched almost everything you see in the city around you, and certainly she's touched the life of every staffer in this organization for 15 years. Kristen started her career here in the planning department. She moved on to a development review role as a project manager before being promoted to her current position. Her historical knowledge of the agency, her expertise, her attention to detail, and her professionalism have led to better documents, better presentations, both internally and externally, and an all-around better workplace for all of us. Most importantly, she's a wonderful person. She's kind, she's friendly, she's intelligent, hardworking. She'll be greatly missed. We thank her for her role in creating one of the great cities of the world over the past 15 years. I also want to salute and say goodbye to Frank Keller, who will be leaving us over the next couple of weeks. Frank has been with the agency for just shy of 50 years. He started in the BRA summer program in 1968 as a financial assistant helping with payroll and other administrative tasks. He returned to the summer program in 1969 and never looked back. He is currently serving as the assistant controller of the BPDA. In 1974, when Frank transferred over to the accounting department, he performed his accounting functions manually using big, dusty green ledger books. He used, I assume, an abacus, a slide rule. And he got the job done. And then the computer age came, and methodologies changed, and Frank adapted with them. But he has been doing the work here for an awful long time and has played a tremendous role. He served under 4 mayors, including Kevin White, Ray Flynn, Tom Menino, and currently Mayor Marty Walsh. And he served over 14 different BRA directors. Frank is a lifelong City of Boston resident and proud of it. He currently resides in West Roxbury with his wife, Tricia. He has 2 grown children, Timothy and Caitlin. And Frank truly cares. He's a company man. He cares about this agency, and he's devoted his entire working career to it. He's intelligent, dedicated, candid, personable, always willing to teach and always willing to learn from others. And his passion for the job can only be matched by his passion for Boston sports, as those of us who speak with him know. We'll miss his spark, his wit, his terrible jokes. Only kidding. He's absolutely hysterical. We'll miss fundamentally, and this has a really significant, we're seeing a lot of this because people who work here for 40 to 50 years often retire, I'm finding. And we lose really important institutional knowledge. So we are going to sorely and sincerely miss that. 50 years of history in the organization. He's literally seen it all. Frank's long-standing commitment to the agency leaves a big hole to be filled. And in his honor, we'll all strive to work harder and laugh harder. So thank you and Godspeed to Frank Kelleher. Thank you for your service to the people of Boston over 5 decades. Best wishes to you and your family for health and happiness in the decades of retirement to come. So with that, I wish you all a good night. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We need a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn tonight's meeting.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting passed. Motion adjourned. Meeting adjourned.